Hello, my name is Michael Leahy and I'm speaking to you on behalf of the newly formed Irish Freedom Party. I've been involved in canvassing in County Clare over the last 3 weeks or so, and many people have asked us about our policies in regard to the European Union, regarding us rightly as a Eurosceptic party. I think any analysis of what has happened in Ireland over the past 20 to 25 years would give any Irish person serious cause for concern in regard to how the European Union operates. Our main concern in recent years in regard to the European Union has been in respect of the European currency. There are many aspects of the European Union in which we're concerned over centralisation of power and democratic deficit, but the operation of the European currency has had the most direct and the most dramatic impact on this country. I opposed the establishment of the European currency back in 1998 because I felt at that time that it was not appropriate that a small country like Ireland should use the very important economic implement of being able to adjust our interest rates. What has happened since the formation of the currency is that the industrial heartland of Europe, namely Germany, has been able to generate very substantial profits, very substantial surpluses by exporting to the rest of the continent. This has meant, in normal course of events where different currencies existed, this would have been handled by adjustments in interest rates which would have made the importing countries more competitive and would have enabled those surpluses to be rebalanced. This is no longer possible within the European currency, and what has happened is that Germany, or the German banking system, has been exporting those surpluses to the banking systems of other countries. We're all too well aware of how this played out in Ireland. It resulted in massive amounts of cheap credit being made available in Ireland at precisely the wrong time. This led to the building boom and the subsequent bust. And we all know what happened, and that we were saddled with a €64 billion debt in order to bail out the banking system. And I stress, in order to bail out the Franco-German banking system. Yes, our own banks were at fault, but they were not the only parties who were at fault. Many international economists now recognise that the formation of the European currency was a very serious mistake. Indeed, the American Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz, in his very interesting book, The Euro and Its Discontent, has argued that without an orderly wind down of the European currency, Europe will be doomed to a long, protracted period of slow growth, possible economic and possible social instability. We must not allow this to happen. Therefore, our party, in the first instance, seeks an orderly wind down of the European currency. Our debt situation has been exacerbated by how this has played out. In 2007, we had an international debt of €30 billion. This has now risen to €215 billion, and this is a catastrophic level. We pay €7 billion in interest at the moment per annum on that debt. And remember, this is in a period when interest rates are relatively low. If you wonder why we have a trolley crisis, if you wonder why we have a housing crisis, if you wonder why services are so poor, €7 billion per annum could transform this country. Now, when interest rates rise, this situation is going to get a great deal worse. We in the Irish Freedom Party, in addition to seeking a wind down of the European currency and a redenomination in our currency of our national debt, this would enable us to significantly reduce the debt burden on our country. This does not constitute a default. In international economic law, a redenomination within your own currency does not constitute a default, but it would significantly improve the fiscal and economic situation in Ireland. In addition to the euro currency, we seek repatriation of powers generally from the European Union, and we're not the only ones who are doing that. We seek, in the first instance, that we would have a repatriation of our fisheries, that we would seek powers in regard to our borders, that we seek control over our borders. It's a great pity that the European Union didn't listen to David Cameron when he looked for that. Perhaps if they had, Britain would still wish to remain in the European Union. But we all know how that has played out. The European Union has shown itself to be intransigent in dealing with these matters. In regard to our fisheries, many people are aware of the extent of financial resources that have been extracted from this country by virtue of the fact that our fisheries, which are our property, have been made communitarian property. And this happened very shortly before our accession to the European Union. And it was a price we were forced to pay in order to be able to join. Our waters are largely overfished by European fleets, and this is likely to get considerably worse now that the British waters are going to revert to British control. It is appropriate for us to seek repayment for these our assets. We should possibly rent our national waters to European fleets in return for a payment. Or else we should take back control of these waters completely and use them for our own purposes. There are many other features of the European Union that cause us grave concern. It is over-centralised. It pays no attention to the desires of its members. Look at how we were made to rerun 2 referenda. This is anti-democratic. One of the things that Theresa May said, even though I do not regard her as having been a great Prime Minister, she said she would not hold a second referendum in Britain because to do so would undermine the belief and the trust that ordinary people had in the democratic institutions of that country. I think the decision to rerun, in particular the Lisbon Treaty, has had a very detrimental effect on people's trust for our institutions. And I see a great deal of cynicism out there now. Typically, we only get 50 to 55% of people voting in a general election. This is almost non-participation. This would have been unheard of 30 years ago. But I think because our institutions have been undermined by our belonging to Europe, this has taken place. I can assure you I have no animosity to European people, but I think that the European Union has become a behemoth, an octopus which is strangling the life out of the European states and European economies. It has to be reformed. We're not the only ones who are saying this. Britain was saying it, and Britain is now left. Other countries are saying it. There are very substantial popular movements in Italy, France, Hungary, Poland, Spain, which seek a significant reform of the European Union. We must not be behind the curve on this, because there may be a disorderly breakup both of the currency and of the institutional structures. And we do not want to be faced with a crash-out situation. So we have to be ahead of the curve. We have to be putting our case forward in Europe. I feel that many of our politicians feel they no longer represent the interests of the Irish people, and they don't see their role as primarily representing the interests of their native country. They see themselves as administrators for a large multinational bloc. This is a recipe for disaster. I hope this explains some of our policies in regard to the European Union, and I hope that Irish people can come to see that in many respects the European Union is no longer working in our interests. It must be brought back to the position where it is doing so. Thank you for listening. My name is Michael Leahy of the Irish Freedom Party.